Today we're focusing on owner pilots and flight safety, and this is because, as you've often heard me say, the safety record in private aviation is 5 times worse than the airlines. And one of the culprits of driving this statistic to really bad performance is the fact that pilot owners crash a lot. So that brings the numbers down and the safety record kind of goes out the window. Now, why do pilot owners crash a lot? Well, let's look at a few situations. Now, first of all, there are a number of aeroplanes that you can fly single pilot. From the PC-12, which is single engine turboprop, you can check the video I did on the PC-12, a very interesting aeroplane, to the PC-24, which is the jet version that Pilatus built, a very good aeroplane, you can check on that video. We've got the CJ1 through 4, they all can be flown single pilot, built by Cessna. You've got the older Cessna Citation 1, 2 and 5, you can fly single pilot. You've got the King Air, which you can fly single pilot, which is a turboprop, 2 engines. You've got the TBM 940, which is another turboprop, but single engine. The Phenom 100 and the Phenom 300 jets, built by Embraer. They both can be flown single pilot. The Piper Meridian, Piper Malibu, they're single engine turboprops. The Vision Jet, built by Cirrus, that's an interesting one. It's a single engine jet. And this is interesting because it has a parachute on it. So if you do get stuck or the engine fails or whatever, you can deploy the parachute and the parachute will bring the plane and the occupants down safely to the ground. And then we've got the Honda Jet, which is one of the latest ones. Now, all of these airplanes don't have much range. I mean, the PC-24 has got 2,000 mile range. I think it's the one with the most range out of the ones I've just mentioned. And all these airplanes can be flown a single pilot. So a lot of pilot owners tend to gravitate towards this because they like to, buy an airplane that they can fly on their own. Some of these owner pilots live in these communities where you have a runway in the middle of a series of villas, like for example Spruce Creek over in Florida. And there's the other one where John Travolta lives. He has his planes parked outside his house, basically. You have a house and a hangar next door, and these owner pilots have their airplane in the hangar. They wake up in the morning, they feel like going flying, they jump in their jet or their turboprop, whatever it may be, and off they go. Now, a lot of these people aren't commercial pilots. They just train private pilots, maybe instrument rating. But my advice is, if you are thinking of buying an airplane and learning to fly, you need to do it professionally. Especially if you're going to operate one of these aircraft. If you're flying, Cessna 150 or 172, or you're just going to take up aerobatics, then it's a different story. If you're going to go into what I define as high performance aircraft, such as would be the PC-12 or the TBM 940, or if you're going to go into, a turboprop twin engine aircraft like the King Air. I mean, there are a lot of King Airs crash. Every year, lots of King Airs crash. Even this year, where people haven't flown much because of the lockdown, we've still seen a lot of King Air crashes. And these King Air crashes are pilot owners most of the time that crash. So let's sort of analyse why a pilot owner would tend to crash more. Well, as I said before, first of all, it's the training. And a lot of these crashes are stalls and getting into a spin. Or they're VFR trained and they end up in instrument meteorological conditions and they're not trained for that. And sometimes what happens is these guys have spent $3-4 million to buy their private airplane, and they think that's all they need to do. That's spent the money, the plane's going to fly on its own. But they don't realize that they need to invest in their training, and the training doesn't just happen once. If you take an airline pilot, when I was flying for the airlines, we would be in the simulator every 6 months. So every 6 months you go into the simulator for 2 or 3 sessions. And then you've got training online as well. So you're constantly training. So if the professionals are constantly training, and the professionals are flying, anywhere between 500 to 900 hours a year. So if these guys are flying 500 to 900 hours a year, and I'm talking to the pilot owner out there, if the professional pilot, airline pilot, is flying 500 to 900 hours a year, they get all this training. Well, the pilot owner that flies a lot less, sometimes less than 100 hours a year, well, they need more training. And, so if you are looking at buying one of these aircraft, and there is a simulator for this aircraft, I would recommend getting in the simulator 2, maybe 3 times a year. And when you go, spend 3 or 4 days in the simulator each time. And I would do other types of training, like, upset recovery training, do some aerobatics, learn how to get into a spin, how to get out of a spin. All this type of training is really, really important. Now, if you can, when you do fly, I would recommend flying with a professional pilot with you. Now, that doesn't mean you have to hire, a captain instructor that's going to be sitting by your side and fly with you all the time. You can find maybe a young, qualified commercial pilot that can sit in the right-hand seat and read the checklists and do the radio. If an emergency situation does happen, that other person sitting next to you can, take some of the load off you by, reading the checklist, doing the radio for you. That really does help. And the other factor is, 4 pairs of eyes, 4 eyes are better than 2 eyes. So that would be my recommendation. But I still know there are a lot of owner pilots out there that don't like to have another pilot with, and they want to fly on their own. But if you do, you need to get more training. So you're spending the money on the plane, but remember, the pilot is sometimes more important than the plane. So you need to invest in yourself, and you need to constantly be training. Now and again, take a professional pilot with you to give you some training in the airplane, besides doing your training in the simulator. Look at things professionally. I mean, when I started my career, the first professional airplane I flew professionally was a Cessna Citation 1. And there were 2 owners, and they both flew. They were pilot owners, but we had an airline pilot that would train them, sometimes fly with me when we had to go and pick the boss up, or had to go and do some flights for the bosses, which when they weren't on board. And then I used to fly with them as well, especially on weekends. And then when they were going away with the family, I would act as their co-pilot, and I would make sure that they were doing things properly. But these were 2 humble guys. And I spent almost 3 years with them before I moved on to the next contract. And it was formative for me. It was good. I got my jet hours up, which was good. And it was a difficult time. We're talking 1992, 1995, when the market for pilots wasn't very good. And I was fortunate enough to be flying a jet, and I built my hours up, which was good. So these pilot owners were going about it in the right way, though. They were going to the simulator. They were having a professional fly with them, and they were going about it the right way. And so that's really my recommendation here. Get a lot more training. Do some aerobatics, do some upset recovery, do more simulator than the minimum requirement. And now and again, if you can't on every flight, now and again, bring in a professional pilot instructor that can sit with you and train you a bit and improve you. And always be improving, because that will keep you safe and those that are flying with you. Now, if you haven't subscribed to Biz Jet TV, I encourage you to subscribe to Biz Jet TV. Give us a thumbs up. Comment below. We'd love to hear from you. If you're a pilot owner, or if you're thinking of buying your own airplane and learning to fly, please feel free to contact me and can give you some advice and point you in the right direction. And that's all from Fabrizio, Poli on Biz Jet TV, and I'll see you on the next one.